Anyway, I've pushed aside the ball joint mod, at least for a few days, maybe a week or two, to kind of play. Not really play, this is something somebody else has already more or less commissioned. So this is, I think I posted one once before about the Toyota 5-lug mod. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to start work on the 1/2-inch thick aluminum brackets to hold the calipers. So I've done all the work in CAD, and I actually have two different prints here. Okay, so because the thought is this is a general layout, and this one with all the numbers on it is what I can, when I put the chunk in the mill, I can start with a point here, any one of these points basically, and then use the DROs and jump around and put my center drilling in all the spots. The outside perimeter, outline, profile, whatever you want to call it, isn't extremely critical. Okay, I want it to look kind of nice, blah blah blah, but the positioning of these holes is critical. This hole here, this is going to be kind of a pain. I haven't decided if I'm going to do that on the rotary table or bore it. Might be another option there too that I do along the same time I do the outside here. So we'll get to that. So anyway, I've got two chunks of aluminum, and I kind of wanted to see which would fit better and leave me a bigger chunk. That one's nice and square, and I've got some ideas for that one. So basically, I just need to get kind of close here, so I'm just folding over the edge of the paper to see where that one fits. And I could put this one right beside it, and I end up with this, you know, this chunk here and a chunk here and a strip on the end there. Well, I'd like to keep as many square inches as possible. So I'm fairly close up there. I've got room in here. That'll be kind of hard to cut. I don't know if can you see through that? Let's see here. Yeah, there you can see the other line now. Alright, I think you can just make out the other line. So I've got about 3/16 of an inch in there, and I could get in with the bandsaw, and, you know, and I think maybe what I'm going to do is, just because I don't want to make things that difficult on myself for an extra, you know, 1/2 inch of aluminum, well, let's just take this. So there's where the edge of the parts are underneath. So what I can do now is I can make one straight saw cut right through there. That still leaves me a chunk over here to be able to clamp with. And actually, once I get them laid out, I may actually I may do all the center drilling first and then cut them apart, because I'm pretty sure these two sides are nice and parallel. 9 3/32. 9, yeah, they're really close. Yep, they're parallel. So yeah, I think I'll do the layout and stuff like that, and then do all the center drilling, cut them apart. We'll see what order I put these up in. To do this, since I don't have CNC, okay, the way this pattern, the shape is, okay, what I plan on doing, I've got two ways I can do it. I can either bolt it down here to a rotary table, and, you know, I have most of the angles and everything like that on here and that stuff, and I can, you know, come up here and make a straight cut and round the corner off later, and then turn it, and then get the cutter line back up and cut that. I think that's going to be a royal nightmare. So what I'm going to try first, we'll see whether it works or not, it should without any problem, is I'm going to use a pattern and the router. So this is like machining for guys without a mill, you know. Really only works with flat stuff. This is just going to be a flat plate. Now I got two different kinds of pattern bits here. Okay. This one comes, I'm going to be using a router table, and this one comes up from the bottom. And so you can see if I'm trying to hold the aluminum down there, man, I got the nasty end pointing up. Another factor is how thick my pattern has to be. I want a lot of bearing riding on it, and you can see that, you know, if I had a 1/4 inch, what do I got here that's 1/4 inch? Well, let's say I used a pattern this thin. You know, when I get it here, you know, I'm missing at least 1/8 of an inch there before it actually gets up to the cutter. If I come up that close right to the bottom of the aluminum, I'm missing the bearing completely. Okay, so I need to keep that in mind. So I'm probably going to use 1/2 inch. Now, whether I use 1/2 inch aluminum as the pattern or 1/2 inch plywood, most likely I'm going to use plywood or MDF. I've got to take a look and see exactly what I've got running around. But you can see here that I'm well into the cutter. I can have that bearing, you know, right in the middle of the pattern there, and get up into the cutter, and that way I don't have a lip on the bottom of the aluminum. But it has to be thicker because of that gap there. So you can see this gap's not quite as big. I could actually use a thinner pattern with that, but not a great deal thinner. God, maybe a 32nd, 16th of an inch. Anyway, with this one coming up through the bottom of the table, okay, as long as, you know, I'll have the pattern there basically, the aluminum will be underneath it. So this is a much nicer end. If I was to slip and hit that or something like that, boy, that would be a whole lot nicer, more forgiving than having the that other nasty end up there. So this is the one I'm going to use. And I could probably get away with a 3/8 inch thick pattern. Let's see here. There's 3/8 of an inch. Yeah, 3/8 of an inch, even if I take it all the way to the top, which I wouldn't have to. I'm still overlapping the actual cutter blade, good 1/16 of an inch, 3/32. So that's cool. So anywhere in that 3/8 of an inch thick to 1/2 inch thick is what I'm looking for. I'm going to go see if I can find that. Preferably I want to do it out of wood. If I'm going to cut it out of aluminum, then basically I'm going to end up making one perfectly and then do the other one as a pattern from that one. I'd rather have a separate pattern because then I only end up with 2 brackets. If I create a separate pattern, let's say a wood pattern, 1, it's a whole lot easier to work with and everything, and 2, I still have the pattern when these 2 are done. And I don't have to make 3 out of aluminum. Because for this is just prototyping, okay? Once everything's proven, adjusted, tweaked, whatever, these would be laser cut, okay, or CNC'd or whatever. So another reason not to take the time and expense and all that kind of stuff to do it out of wood. So let's see if we can find some wood. Not to do it out of aluminum, rather. Let's see if we can find some wood. Well, I'm looking around. I could have used 3/8 inch acrylic, nylon, acetyl, anything like that. The only problem is I don't want, you know, if this bearing drags a little bit, I don't want a whole lot of heat to build up. The wood, it might get a little dark, smoke a little bit, whatever, but it won't melt it. I had this piece of, I have this piece of 2x4. It's pre-cut and it's birch. Okay, now I have lots of other 1/2 inch plywood running around, and I'm going to go ahead and, this was a more expensive piece, obviously, but notice there's no knots, okay? Then there's no real knots on the other side. Now this is a veneer, okay, but you know how when you look down plywood, you see, a lot of times you see, cheap plywood at least, you see a lot of voids, you know, from where they had a knot. So I don't know if it'll focus on that or whatever, but see there's a knot right there under the veneer. But there's really, you know, that's like one of the only ones on here, okay? The problem is as you start cutting those knots, they're really brittle and hard and they pop out. Well, I don't want those voids right in the edge where the bearing's going to be running. So I don't really want to go out and buy 1/2 inch thick MDF, which would be even better. 1/2 inch masonite would be perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a square out of here and see if I can get started on making the pattern. This dimension is just to get it the size. So I should be able to just use the Ryobi cordless here. It's light enough weight and I can do that. Now the blade I'm going to use here, looks pretty aggressive and nasty. Now this is great for wood, and it's great for doing straight lines. Okay, it's not good for trying to do turns, because there's no kerf, whatever you call it, where the teeth go out to the sides. When they bend out to the sides like that, to create a wider cut that allows the back of the blade room to move, so you can go around corners. This won't do that. So the Ryobi's, it's nice. It's actually got a quick release on here for these this style of bayonet mount or whatever. I think that's what it's called. So we'll put that back on. Oh, it does have a laser. I forgot it had that. I don't have too many tools with it, so I don't really play with it all. The setting over here on the side, this is the reciprocity setting. And what that does is that changes the blade from going straight in and out to orbiting, you know, oscillating like that. So that way when it comes under and pulls up, it makes a more aggressive cut. I don't really care about that right now. At least I don't think so. We'll see. Well, if you actually keep the laser on the line, it actually stays pretty close. If you let it wander. Well, it wanders. Go figure. Got the safety trigger when you're holding it at odd angles. Real hard to hit them. So we'll shut the laser back off, put the wood away, and transfer the pattern. I'm gonna mark the center points and that stuff. I don't think I'm really gonna use much of it as far as, you know, drilling the holes to size and everything, but I will probably use that for where I attach the pattern to the aluminum, because then I can drill them out later and not have any other additional marks or scars around here. This center, since I think I'm probably going to rough cut it with a hole saw or something like that, then I want to clean it up with the template and the router. I will mark that. I'll mark at least the center of that stuff, and then I'll see what I've got for hole saws matching up with that. So anyway, I've picked the two manufactured edges, because I know that corner is going to be square compared to what the edges I cut. Let's make our dimples. Let's use something a little more substantial. So, like I said, these are just going to be for mounting, so I just want to know where they're at. I could come back after the fact, line the pattern back up and mark them. But might as well just do it while I'm here. Okay. And by using the ballpoint pen and pushing down nice and firm, it will leave a dent in the surface of the wood that I can see. Oh yeah, you can see it there. Okay. Now for doing some cutting. So I'm going to make the first cuts with that same blade and saw, because it will actually help keep things straight. I'm going to cut them a little wide, and then I can sand them on the belt sander, I think, and do that. All right. Well, I should be able to clean up the edges down to the inside of the blue line. Okay. Do the rounding. The biggest challenge is going to be right in here, and I think I'll probably have to get kind of creative for that. So you can see no gaps, voids from... oh, there's a tiny one right there. I don't think that's going to hurt anything because I think my bearing is going to ride right in the middle. But yeah, you can see that it came out really flat and everything like that. And I tried to make sure, like especially around these edges here, you can see the striation, the burn mark, but I'm not feeling any difference. Okay, I didn't want any. I can clean it up with a hand file in the aluminum later, so this is certainly close enough. So let's see if I can get these inner races or inner radius. This little drum sander here, and I found it a whole lot easier just to take it off the arbor because it couldn't quite seem to get it small enough. So let's see if we can get it in there. When they wear out, you can just cut them off, but man, when they're new, they're kind of a pain. Yeah, it's starting to split that thing. Hey, proper tool for the proper job, right? Not. So, my drill press turns like that, so I'm going to want that flap down at the bottom, and hopefully it'll stay together long enough to do what I need it to do. This is probably a Harbor Freight setup. We'll see if it works. I think this is probably the fastest I've had this drill press spinning before. But there's some wobble in there, okay? You can probably see that wobble around a bit. So instead of running it slow, going womp, 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 beating me up and that stuff, I'm going to run it faster. And hopefully it'll average out that wow so I can get a little smoother radius in here. That made some nice, pretty smooth radiuses there. So I'm going to touch this up just a little bit on the belt sander again, and a bump I made here, and then I think that's it for the pattern.